Hello everyone. Authenticity is such an important subject for all of us, isn't it? And given what's been going on around us inside organisations and in some of our respected institutions, it's hardly surprising that it's become so important. And it's all about trust, it's all about integrity. So authenticity is inspirational and aspirational for all of us, but what actually is it? Well, authenticity is obviously subjective. What's authentic for me is different for each one of you. However, authenticity is basically about being real. Authenticity is that sense, you know, when you meet somebody and you really get a sense of groundedness, of solidness, that what they say and what they do and who they are the same thing. You get a connected and committed sense from them. Well, authenticity is something that we all aspire to, and yet authenticity can be quite challenging for us. Why is that? Well, basically it's because many of us have been wearing masks for so long that we no longer realise that we're wearing them. Now, there's nothing wrong with masks in themselves. Masks can be very suitable. Like if you have a certain situation that you need to walk into, an organisation, you dress accordingly. That is a mask. It's a role that we step into. So there's nothing wrong with masks. But the challenge is with masks when they're worn for the intention of hiding who I am. So what gets in the way of authenticity is something that is known as the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome affects about 70% of people, and it affects high achievers. And the imposter syndrome is all about feeling like a fake or a fraud, feeling like I don't deserve the success that I've got. How many of you like watching people? How many of you like watching them and understanding or trying to figure out what do they do, who are they, and how do they live their lives? Well, I love doing that, and I was sitting in Martin Place at one stage watching people go by with a cup of coffee in my hand, and a fellow strode into Martin Place, and he was tall, he was imposing, a very striking figure with a beautiful dark suit, crisp white shirt, red tie, carrying in his left hand one of those briefcases that folds out and almost includes a library, and in his right hand a full-length umbrella, and on his head he was wearing a bowler hat. I looked at him and I thought, aren't you amazing? I've got no idea who you are, but I think you must be somebody really important. I think you must be maybe a managing director or a lawyer or a banker or somebody like that. Anyway, he drew alongside me, and as he was walking, he was swinging his umbrella. And as he drew alongside me, the end of his umbrella caught in the groove between the pavers, and he stumbled. And as he stumbled, he let go of his briefcase, and it hit the ground and flew open, and the entire contents spilled out onto Martin Place. His ham and cheese and tomato sandwich. And I looked at him and I thought, isn't that amazing? I was taken in. You were wearing a mask, and I thought I had an idea of who you were. But you know, some of the most famous people wear masks. Some of the most famous people feel like fakes and frauds at times. Jodie Mitchell, sorry, I've been listening to too much music. Jodie Foster, who I think is one of the more talented actresses around. She was filming The Accused, and she felt sure that she was doing such a bad job that somebody would come and kick her off the set and make her, leave, so she'd have to go back to university so she could earn a living. When she won the Oscar for that, what she kept saying to herself was, they're going to come and take it away. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Meryl Streep. So Mike Myers, who's a talented comedian, he thinks the no talent police are going to come and get him sometime at night and toss him out. People from all walks of life who are incredibly successful. Sports people, CEOs, actors, musicians, golfers, people who are successful are concerned that they don't deserve their success. Even Albert Einstein, who has got to have one of the greatest brains of all times, said, there's nothing special about me, I'm merely curious. Amazing. You know, it only affects successful people, and I'm fortunate enough to work with some CEOs, and these are incredibly successful, talented people who've got the runs on the board. Objectively, they can see it in their annual figures, and yet every year they get concerned that they're not going to be able to pull the rabbit out of the hat again. Every year they think, oh, I don't know if I can do it again. They feel like fakes and frauds, like they don't deserve their success. You see, you have to be successful in order to have a success that you can deny. So it only hits the high achievers. Having said that, it's a double bind, because people who experience this syndrome want to be successful to prove to ourselves and to other people that we can do it, that we are worthwhile, and yet when we get that success we flick it as if we don't deserve it. This is not something I've just pulled out of my hat. This is actually a syndrome that's been incredibly well researched. Back in the 1970s, 2 psychologists in the university identified that their high-achieving women were really suffering come exam time. These women were doing their PhDs or their masters, and they were terrified that they were going to fail, totally illogically, against all reason, because they had always been successful. So they investigated further, and what they did was they identified a whole series of symptoms that relate to imposterhood. They identified that each of these women felt like a fake or a fraud, felt that they just didn't have what it took, that they were successful because they were in the right place at the right time, that it was good luck, somebody else thinking they were far more intelligent than they actually felt they were themselves. And these women were focusing on their deficiencies and their weaknesses and failures rather than looking at their strengths. And this was fairly common. There have been a number of research studies since that time, that have actually ratified those original results. One of them actually debunked the myth that it was a female-only syndrome. Until that time, that's where it had been researched. And this particular piece of research identified that men and women both experience the imposter syndrome. It's just that they experience it differently. And I'm going to grossly generalize here. Men are conditioned to be the breadwinners in the family. I don't know to what extent that's happening with Gen Y. Maybe they're too young to find out yet. but a lot of men have been conditioned to be the breadwinners. They're the ones that put the financial roof over the head. And so they're expected to be successful. They are brought up to believe that they're going to be successful, so they just go for it. They fake it till they make it, which is something that a lot of women feel quite uncomfortable with. Women, on the other hand, are brought up to juggle a lot of roles. We're still the ones that have the children. They haven't got round that one yet. And we're the ones that generally keep the family together. We're the nurturers in the family, not always. But if we're successful, then there's a high price for that. We think there is. We think that we're going to have to give something up. We think that we may not have the relationship that we want, or not have one at all. We think that we may not have a good relationship with our children or be good parents, or we may not have children. There's something that has to give. So the price of success may be too high, and I actually wonder whether the glass ceiling isn't something that we've actually created because we aren't willing to pay the price. We aren't willing to play the games when you get to that top level. I don't think it's anything that's been forced on us.